Hey everybody, I'm back with Freeman Michaels. We started our conversation last week. People love that conversation, by the way. We had
Yeah.
a lot of amazing things about it. And we just before we came out, we were talking about we're talking about authenticity and like just grounded spirituality.
And
And
your nice glasses.
right, and so like every 5 or 10 years, I get this whim, this idea that I'm going to suddenly be a different kind of guy, like a guy who's made it. So I bought a house 10 years ago because it was a fancy model home, and I said, I love this feeling here. And so I bought the house like a schwanz. Um, or I buy these Gucci-looking bags once in Costa Rica because they just feel so classy, and I finally feel like I'm going to be able to pull that off. Or a couple of weeks ago, I saw like Danny DeVito online, and he had these kind of crazy LA man who's made it glasses that you once in a while see people wear, and you're like, whoa, they're either crazy or they're wealthy or they're both or something. So
Right.
I'm in the phase where it's like 5, 10 years since I've done this. So I go and I spend all this money to get these ridiculous glasses. And then, as I told you, I go back to trashing everything because that's just who I am. And it's just, you think I'd learn. I mean, I bought a house on this premise and trashed the house. So in any event, I'm trying this on for size as a way of being,
Yeah.
some degree of consciousness, and maybe for the last time, and finally be able to embrace and recognize the fact that this is just not who I am. But in the meantime, I like the way they feel on my face. They're light, but they're solid at the same time. And yeah.
So what if, I mean, here's my thought about this. Because, I was a professional actor. And before I was a professional actor, I was just a kid who was trying on glasses, really. I mean, as a kid in high school or college, both, trying on these characters. And I remember, sort of sitting in front of the camera, before it was a camera, when it was a stage, sitting in front of a mirror, putting my makeup on or about to go on. And I'd be staring at myself, like feeling like I was this character, right? Um, and I think this is my experience. Throughout my life, I feel like there's been these moments of trying something on. And, I could say that, oh, it's inauthentic. But the truth is, I think there's like these layers of self-discovery in the process of trying on
Yeah.
glasses, the persona, trying on a particular job, a particular this. I mean, okay, so reading your book, it's like trying on these spiritual practices,
So, and we are talking about grounded spirituality here.
or the
Nice.
yeah.
You're not using it as a doorstop. That's a good sign.
I love your books, Jeff. I love your writing.
Oh, I love that.
Years.
You're gonna do a commercial. This is fantastic.
No, I love it.
Great.
I love it.
I like this book. I think it's solid, and I there's nothing in this book. This is the first time I've written a book where there's nothing I want to change in the book, which is a rare and unusual thing for a self-critical writer. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. So I think this search for authenticity, in the honesty of the searching, I think that's as authentic as it gets. My favorite hat is my favorite hat until it's not. And then I find a different hat and I think that's my favorite hat. And then I wreck it or lose it or whatever. And then I'm on to the next one. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's something to be said for play too. It's like
Yes.
I'm just having fun with these ridiculous Verstinkene Danny DeVito lookalike glasses. I mean, it's just fun. It's silly, and at some point it won't be fun anymore, and I'll move on to the next thing. I mean, I think there's a difference between making a genuine effort to explore ways of being.
Yes.
I talked about this in Soul Shaping, to see what aligns with what I would call sacred purpose, whatever you want to call it, and versus playing with look and playing with things on all kinds of other levels because we don't want to feel like we're locked into a fixed way of being that isn't necessarily rewarding for us.
Well,
so Schlepper Jeff may in fact be a perfect reflection of my sacred purpose, but I'm not sure. I still think there's a classier version of me living somewhere inside of here. So I'm going to play with it to see if one day he shows up for more than like a day or two. If I can buy the thing and not ruin it for a month, it's a sign that I'm making progress in that direction.
Well, and we contain multitudes, right? This idea that I like to use this term dimensionalizing. So part of me is a slob. Part of me likes to dress fancy and go to fancy, whatever. Part of me,
yeah.
And the parts of me that sometimes get expressed. I think the thing that you talk about, and I share with you, the big maturation is is the opposite of my self-rejection. It's this deep and profound self-acceptance, complete with all the parts I don't always like or don't know what to do with.
Right.
You know, clearly there's expressions of aspects of me that I'm not okay with in the world. So, but I still want to express that part of me. So what's the healthy expression, right? And this is what I miss from acting is I could play a really horrible character and feel more alive in that character, you know, and more self-expressed in that character than I had for the previous 3 years of my life, you know? And so something in playing that gave me permission to have this outlet for this aspect of me that is. I just don't get to, you know, have a healthy expression of it. So, you know, I think with the whole spiritual journey and the journey to sort of heal and whatever, I think part of it is those things that we really deny and reject. What if we had a healthy expression for those aspects, you know?
I mean, you know, I talked about this festival, vision of a festival in soul shaping where people get to go and just take on somebody else's way of being to see if it aligns with part of them and they weren't even aware of it, or to confirm that in fact it's not the path they want to walk. You know, it's like the notion of a polyphrenic soul. You use the term dimensionality, you know, however you want to characterize it. Jack Kennedy said happiness is full use of one's powers. So I would reframe it and say, you know, happiness is full exploration of one's aspects.
I love it. I love that.
I mean, it seems to me that's the most beautiful way to, and I think this movement towards this exploration of gender inclusivity that we talked about last time is part of that. It's a part of people allowing themselves to say, I don't know who the fuck I am.
Yes.
And I'm going to go through my life exploring all kinds of different pathways of possibility. And, you know, maybe or maybe not at some point come to a place where I feel like a more integrated and clarified experience of the self. So every aspect gets a seat at the table. Shamed, shut parts, acknowledged parts, rewarded parts, all those parts. And they keep playing themselves out and interfacing and sharing the meal in a completely different way over time. You know?
I love it. I love it. Because then we don't have to, we can hold the kind of complexity, right? There are things in my life I do because it's a way I know to make money. There's things I do in my life because I just like to do them. I mean, I'd like to put the two together sometimes, but it doesn't always work that way, right? Sometimes there's an outlet that's just about my self-expression. You know, there's things that I'm a yes to that I can't figure out, you know, why I want to do it, but I just keep feeling compelled to do something, you know, something I love to do. So I mean, that's I think a big part of, I want to feel fully expressed. I want to feel mostly comfortable in the way that I self-express. I mean, there's a certain part of self-expression, which is the knowing it's uncomfortable, doing it because there's a kind of creative tension that comes out when we kind of step into that discomfort. So that's its own game. But mostly, even with that, I want to be able to embrace that and say, yeah, I like putting myself out there in a way that feels risky and so forth, because I feel like I grow from that. I feel more alive when I do that.
So I think that's why a survivalist consciousness, as opposed to an authentic one, is so risky, because really through a survivalist lens, we define ourselves by what puts food on the table. So if you find a job, you do a thing, whatever it is that you do, that works for you, you hold on to it, you hang on to it, and you don't explore other things because they seem superfluous or unnecessary. But the authentic consciousness quest is fantastic because, look, I get to explore my inner Danny DeVito, for example.
Totally.
In a survivalist framework, I would only put on these glasses if it was going to make people afraid of me so I could generate more income. Right?
Or whatever, yes. More accolades.
They would have some practical purpose or egoic purpose, as opposed to I'm just going to be a goofball and see how it feels to be Danny DeVito.
And it's a dance. I mean, that's the thing, is that, you know, I don't want to be over-identified with the way I make a living and the persona and, you know, the title and all those things. In the same breath, I don't want to deny those things. You know, it's like, can I kind of modulate between the two, you know? And the tyranny of the voice in my head that says, okay, but are you going to make any money out of it? You know, I do want to be able to navigate that, not make that voice wrong, because that practical voice makes sense. Like, okay, let's figure this out.
You need food on the table.
Yeah, kids in school and braces and and let's do that. But it is a delicate dance, and I think the soulful quality is the ability to find self-expression and radical self-acceptance in this crazy thing called life.
Yeah, nicely said. So I think, you know, bringing it back to grounded spirituality, I think one of my problems with what I've been calling patriarchal spirituality or the new Cage movement is I felt as though it was actually leading people in the direction of a very clearly delineated idea of what awakening was. The bashing of the self, the bashing of the story, the bashing of the feelings, the bashing of the body, the bashing of the ego, the bashing of the mind. I mean, it just goes on forever. So everything uncomfortable and unpleasant about the human experience, men decided is not part of the enlightenment field, and that the real enlightenment field is about mastering some transcendent absolute consciousness independent of the localized, misidentified self, that whole story. The problem with that for me was it just seems so bloody unimaginative. It seems so bloody not explorative. And it felt to me as though it didn't, also all that work I did surrendering to a place below that conditioning, below my power mind. You know, I know my power, I can live inside of my power mind forever. We danced forever together. And all of that receptivity and surrender work, what somebody might call exploring the feminine, whatever it was, where I went into the world of feeling and found so many pieces of who I was and the path I was here to walk. If I had just stayed in the rigidified conditioned masculine, I never would have found any path, really, other than a very survivalistic path. So by moving in both of those directions, allowing them to find their fluidity, I was able to find the writer in me. I was able to assert the voice through that masculine thread in me. I was able to surrender into my heart to find the wisdom that I write from sometimes that I can bring into the world. So by moving to a place where I was more enrealed in my consciousness, where I was not trapped in a mastery, fixated, transcendent consciousness, I was allowed to actually come down here into this Jeff Brownness and explore all the possibilities, including my inner Danny DeVito, in my efforts to clarify what my path was and what it meant just to be alive. Like, it wasn't all about, you don't just do all this work because you want to heal and you want to figure out who you are. It's fine. But you do this work because you want to know what it is to be really alive, not in the moment, the way the transcendent bypassers say in the moment when they're not actually in the moment. They sound flatlined. They're flatlined and they have been in a drug stupor forever, and you can't feel any energy coming off their body. More like in the moment, like Alexander Lowen, who was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and spirited and vital and really...
I love how you described his house with the ducks and the horses and the dog, the golden retriever. And
the horses outside. And
the whole thing's alive.
Like 86, and he comes in the room, and it's a old room. He doesn't need to clean it. He says, no, the unconscious is dirty. Let's get in there. And he's got these bright little eyes, and the phone rings, and I'm kicking and hitting and tantruming, and he answers the phone. He goes, Moishi, I got a boy on the table. I'll be back in 5 minutes. He puts the phone down. To me, he's inviting me to live, for fuck's sakes.
Yes. Well, so this is it. So first of all, the spiritual guys are boring. They're just boring.
They're silly now. Doesn't it look silly now when you hear them talk in that flatlined way? I hear Rajashanti, I go, come on. I mean, that's all you got? That's it? That's awakened? That's it? They all feel dead to me, for Christ's sakes.
And look, I've had the conversation countless times because, of course, I did the show and I know the community.
Cutting edge consciousness, right?
The people are boring. They're boring.
And it's all the same story. They all feel like they've been reading all these East Indian texts. Yeah. It's all, and if you look closely, they're bashing the self, they're bashing the feelings, they're bashing the ego. There's nothing left after they've bashed all of it. All you can do is float in a transcendent meditative stupor because you're really not allowed to be inside of your humanness and call that a life. What I love about your book is it taps on the relational element of awakening. Right. Like, we become awakened in part when we're relating to other people, and you can't relate to the spiritual people. It's like they're in their spiritual bubble, and I mean, they may find companions who want to go along in their spiritual bubble, but there's a lack of aliveness. There's a lack of realness, and they're boring. When the shit comes up, then they say that isn't real because that's not who they really are. Right. I mean, what a setup that is. What a bifurcated consciousness that is. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, it just lacks the grit and the honesty. And, there's nothing better than having a really rich experience with someone else. I mean, that's the bonding, but you can't have a rich experience if you're floating up here. You have this kind of, and it's like the same conversation over and over again. It's the same thing. And life isn't that. Life is the golden retriever and the duck quacking and all these crazy things and the smell of the, rain and the struggles of like a good day, a bad day, that's much more real. and I'll take it, you know?
Nice. So Freeman, you're in LA. You've been in LA forever. You've seen all kinds of artifice. And well, you have, and
Yep.
I mean, you could write 20 books about it, and you've been around, I'm sure, LA spirituality, and I know it comes in different forms. I understand it, but what, in terms of the notion of a grounded or ungrounded spirituality, what have you seen? I mean, not just cutting edge consciousness, but just being in that community, and what has been your trajectory from wherever you started with this thing called spirituality to whatever you've arrived at now?
Yeah. So I think I've said to you before, I'm not part of any of the clubs. So some of the work I've done, Mankind Project, I got a lot of value out of doing the Mankind Project's New Warrior training, right? I got a lot of value out of that, but I'm not volunteering every week, and I'm not in that club. And I don't disrespect those people. I like them. They're great. They're doing great work. They're helping, men in the world. Fantastic. Awesome work. I did University of Santa Monica spiritual psychology program. I'm not in that world. I did LifeSpring, but I don't volunteer. And with all of these, it's like I want to take the pieces that I can take without signing up and signing over my own agency.
Right.
Become a devotee. I mean, it's slightly different than the guru, but not really. I mean, you still have to be part of the club, and there's a whole social scene around it. The same is true of a yoga studio. If I want to go take yoga, I mean, I don't really like taking yoga in LA because it's all exercise yoga, like everyone's using it to get fit. And I can never do that because I can barely touch my toes. But I like it as a stretching, and there's some sort of contemplative, meditative classes that I remember. We used to go to this one teacher. It was a place called City Yoga. It doesn't exist anymore, on Fairfax and Santa Monica Boulevard. And I remember one time Jasmine and I were in it, and we went on a Sunday morning, and we left, and everything that we had been struggling with seemed kind of like a joke. It's like we'd cleared it. We'd sweat it out. We'd stretched it out. And
Nice.
I love that. I love that because this idea, and you talk about it in the book, of getting in my body, which, by the way, goes back to my acting. When acting's not good, the teacher would often say, you need to get in your body.
Right.
Like you're acting up here. It's a concept. You're thinking the character. Don't do that. Hit the bags and get in your body and have something behind it emotionally so that you're present, so that you're vibrating in a way that's real. Otherwise, it's simply boring to watch. So, but this whole idea of getting in my body, and how so many things that when I get in my, I'm using monkey mind in this other way. I know I read in the book, but this whole idea of just getting in my own, tripping over my own manic thinking, my own sort of, self-absorbed thinking, and being able to just get in my body and clear it, That's a brilliant piece of puzzle. So from the LA perspective, there's all these little spiritual cliques, and I kind of want nothing to do with any of them, but I don't mind some of those people. I like them. Right. I don't mind dipping my toe in, but I'm not joining.
Got it. I know you don't do yoga because you called it taking yoga rather than doing yoga.
Practice, yeah.
That's key. Okay, so maybe I'll read something from the book.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear what you think about it.
Perfect.
Yeah. So this is in the conversations I have with Michael, who's a sort of imagined seeker in the Heart of the Matter chapter, speaking of which. Bottom line is that you cannot heal and resolve your emotional material with your mind. Knowing our issues is not the same as healing our issues. Your emotional material does not evaporate because you watch it. I've known many who could watch and name their patterns and issues as if they were scientists researching their own consciousness, but nothing fundamentally changed because they refused to come back down into their bodies and move their feelings through to transformation. It's safe up there, above the fray, witnessing the heartache without actually engaging it. Yes, you may be able to get so skilled at a witnessing consciousness that you can overpower your triggers, but that's not presence. Real presence comes through the open heart. The key to the transformation of challenging patterns and wounds is to heal them from the inside out, not to analyze them, not to watch them like an astronomer staring at a faraway planet through a telescope, but to jump right into the heart of them, encouraging their expression and release, stitching them into new possibilities with the thread of love. You want to live a holy life, heal your heart. That's the best meditation of all. Well, so is that consistent with your experience? Because my experience of you, because we've been in contact and we've done things, and I was on Cutting Edge a bunch of times, over the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years, probably something like that, is that you feel change. You feel like you change all the time. You grow. You feel you can grow in the direction of something, I don't know, more integrated. Something about you feels more solidly. I don't know. It's like something, but you've been going through some process.
I think it's radical self-acceptance. I mean, I think there's lots of different things I dip into to have an experience really of release and of so healing's interesting for me. There's this languaging comes from USM. Healing's the process of applying love to whatever part inside hurts. I'd expand that a little bit to say, just a compassionate observation of the experience and peeling away the judgment that it's bad or wrong. So, I don't, because there's this idea in the disconnected spirituality and the patriarchy of spirituality that we want to fix it or solve it or get rid of it versus integrate it versus know that, oh yeah, I do that sometimes. I do react that way. It's my relationship with my insecurity that helps me feel more secure. It's not getting rid of my insecurity. It's the fact that I always say,
Yeah.
knowing the part of me that's untrustworthy is what makes me trustworthy. So that, so when I'm going on the ride, I'm triggered and I'm off and I'm like, oh, I'm on the ride. Some awareness that I'm doing that, but then some honoring of the fact that this is my ride. Now, again, I'd rather have a healthy expression because I'm really pissed off right now than taking it out on the, person in front of me in traffic or whatever I'm doing. So I'd like to do that. I'd like to self-regulate, calm down, and then, allow for the part of me that I'll say it this way. So the other morning, I had a tricky situation. I went to bed. I didn't sleep well. I woke up in the morning feeling incredibly vulnerable. It was very inner child. And I really love just laying there, feeling that level of vulnerability. Because for so many years, I wanted to heal that. And there was this sort of denial of it versus just be with it. This is me. I'm 51 years old and I still feel like a 4-year-old sometimes, or a 7-year-old, or not whatever. And without shame, without the feeling that that's bad, just that I feel really vulnerable and maybe fucked with or overwhelmed or scared or don't know what to do or whatever. And if I don't do anything, just be with it, then it's kind of like, oh, okay. And then there is this kind of adult self that comes in and gets me up and makes the coffee and the day goes on. But it's like, yeah, that's how I feel about it, about the healing is the healing isn't always, it isn't a fixing or a curing, or it's really just a integrating. So I'm okay in a way where I have enough of an observer where it doesn't come out goofy that often, but sometimes it does, and that gets to be loved too. Sometimes it's messy being me,
Just allowing for the experience is, I mean, wherever that piece or that part is going to land, if you're hoping to reach a stage where that piece is less cumbersome or less obstructive,
Yes. Yes.
you're not going to get there if you can't accept it, right? I mean, it's, to label it, to shame and shun it, to do what was done to you in a way,
Yeah.
is going to actually congeal it and solidify it, right?
Totally. And the deny and suppress it makes it really come out in goofy ways. Versus if I can just be with it, then it's okay. There's responses I can have in the world that allow for the part of me that feels overwhelmed or insecure or really pissed off right now and triggered because of something someone said or did or didn't do or whatever. So yeah, that's the game in my world. It sounds more tucked in than it is, because it isn't. Sometimes it's really messy, I think we go back to my kids. There's something about my kids and having them and being their father that's, again, another deepening. It's like, my own journey and then being a relationship in my journey. And then that's a whole deep richness. And then having kids and seeing things reflected back because they are my DNA and they say things in a particular way. And I'm like, did they learn that from me? Or did they just absorb it? Did they come in wired with it in a particular way?
Great question.
Yeah, parts I don't like. My own little, sort of victim-y thing that I do, which I'm not proud of, but it's okay. It's how I sort of learned. My dad does it. I do it. My kids do it. My son especially does it. And then to just really be okay with that. I don't know.
Like, you could see in the way you did that, the challenge with accepting it, it's like, No, I just went through, I sold a house, bought a house, Susan and I, we moved, and it went on for months, this process, dealing with mortgages and, because of that, the one house was being bought before the other house was sold. And so it went on. It was just a nightmare. And it brought up all of this early life primal material around homelessness. We lived in 15 houses before I was 20. I mean, it was, my mother forever screaming, we're going to end up on the street. I mean, this is all that I knew, really. And I saw that, it was very clear that when we began, I was feeling, like my strong adult, confident Jeff, we'll work our way through it. I'll deal with the systems. I always know how to, all that. And then as each day went by, I found myself slipping more and more deeply into this primal interface with this fucked up, miserable 3-year-old who just didn't feel safe in the world anymore. And that was the truth. And there was nothing anyone could do. There was no therapeutic intervention. There's nothing. It was, this material is way too deep and old for me. And I found myself having the hardest time fully acknowledging it and admitting it, because I felt ashamed that I was that after becoming this.
Yes.
After reaching the stage where I could finally wear my, be my inner Danny DeVito, I figured I'd reached a stage where I would no longer be overwhelmed by the fear of homelessness, which was not even a remotely realistic issue. In fact, these were first world problems. We were moving to a better house, trying to be mortgage free. I mean, all of these things, but it made no difference. To my inner child, made no difference. The details didn't matter. Just the not knowing if that would sell before that alone made me into a crazy 3 or 4-year-old. And I do, I try to do, this is where I come, I remember when I was in the bioenergetic training program, I was in a room with 18 women and me. I was the only guy in the program at one point. And we had this conversation, and they said, they're all keep talking about how you have to learn how to manage your material and management. And I said no, because I was a self-actualized. I read Maslow. I was going to be perfected. I was going to clear all the debris. My mother was never going to leave a single imprint on me. All her toxicity was going to be cleared out of me, and I was going to have no lingering issues that were going to prevent me from doing anything. I was going to be perfected. I was appalled by them. I said, why are you such victims? Right now, I don't talk like this. I said, you'll work through all this stuff and you'll be the being you were meant to become, in any case. So as the years have gone by, I've come to accept, and I understand that was a strategy that allowed me to overcome. So it was like perpetual mastery syndrome, we could call it. Okay. I'll define it after I get off. And so and I was going to keep actualizing, writing my goals on the walls. This was a brilliant technique to pull me out of that poverty-stricken reality, that self-hatred, all those things, and become whoever I've become in this lifetime, right? At the same time, I wasn't able to acknowledge what I am now, is that sometimes there are some wound areas, wound structures, areas that are a nexus for our material that may never fully get healed or resolved in this lifetime. You may learn how to avoid them. They may not hit you as hard. You may develop strategies that help you maneuver through them when they come. But some of them are just what they are, and what we have to do as part of self-care and as part of self-acceptance is to finally, for me to be able to say, this primal wound place is not ever going to go away in this lifetime, and I just have to learn how to manage it and own it and deal with it differently, and avoid the kind of conditions that bring it so fervently up to the surface. And it feels kind of liberating to admit it. But then, and I've been writing about it in Facebook and social media, but at the same time, I still noticed the part of me that was still shaming and shunning, just as I had the pathway that I had internalized growing up to shame and shun these characteristics and qualities, rather than to fully, gently, tenderly accept and embrace this part of me.
Yeah.
It's a complicated dance.
Well, the shame one is the one that is the most painful. And even that deserves the compassion of, yeah, I did learn to do that. I'm really tired of the shame. Like, that's not a fun part of my experience. And so we blame the shame on the behavior, and it is the behavior, sure, I guess, but it's really something deeper than that. And so I think the thread is the relationship of the thing that's deeper, that thread of the part of me that got rejected so early on, and the part of me that felt so vulnerable and overwhelmed. And when it gets triggered, I don't like it. But if I can lay in bed and be with it for a minute, if I can just go take a break and take care of myself and be okay with it, if I can come down from an outburst of something that wasn't how I want to show up and be okay with it, again, that's where my power lies. I mean, my confidence is in embracing my insecurity, not in trying to overcome it or not be it. Like, yeah, I get really insecure. It happens to me, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's the game. I mean, that's the bigger game for me right now. And I love all of the spiritual stuff. I do, even the stuff that's a disconnect. There's pieces of it I've dipped into and gotten something out of. You know, I just am, again, I'm not sold on anything. I'm working out my own stuff for me without necessarily needing to sell or market that. Another piece that happens in the kind of way that you and I were raised in this kind of patriarchy and belief structure, that you amass all these things so then you can use them, right? So the teachers who everyone's got their little secret. I think we talked maybe a little about this last time, like my way. And there's no grace in it. There's no grace for other ways as well, you know? And one of the sort of disappointments from that vantage point of amassing all this knowledge and experience and wisdom so I can have power in the world, versus just because it's my own growth and that's the best way. And the humility of just being okay with me, is that when I see younger people not needing it, right? Because that's what's happening right now. We talked about this last time, and I really see it where younger people have the keys to the kingdom. If we're wise, we create a space for them to express what wants to be expressed, the world they're looking to express, right? My kids are not homophobic. The way that they handle the gay and lesbian and transgender issue is so evolved. And I
like,
want to.
it's not an issue.
It's so well, and it's so in their fiber of their being. Like they're so okay with it. And it's like, well, I worked so hard to be okay with it, you know? And I want my badge of honor, you know, part of me does. Part of me is thrilled that this generation, through osmosis or through just a natural point of evolution, doesn't need to do all that crap. Thank God. You know, but the patriarchy wants to hang on. Well, I learned it and it has value and I want to get paid for my value and I want to have authority for my value and I want to have wise saws and things I can spout and then people will think I'm important because I've raised to this point of evolution, transcendence, you know? And
good luck.
That's all kind of nonsense.
They're so goofy. You know, it just all seems so goofy to me now, Freeman. I can't even tell you. I mean, for a while it was like, wow, that's so, well, what the fuck is that, right? It's like, you know, mastery. Oh, I'm a guy, I like the mastery. I like actualization. I like the language of this. But it just didn't feel like that. It felt so, you know, master of one realm, completely incompetent in every other one or something.
That's it.
And, you know, and that didn't make any sense to me. I would rather be, as I think we talked about it, a jack of all trades and a master of none. I now really understand that feels like a more eclectic, integrated, inclusive consciousness to me. You know?
Well, and the story in the book of you being shamed when you were in Mexico by the guy who.
Remember that guy? I remember. I'm right at the pool with him right now. White guy, hair back, real thin, like he might have been 55, but he looked 42, like he swims a lot, runs a lot on the beach. He's made it in real estate, whatever he's done. And, you know, he had credibility for me. He was so dismissive when he asked me about my path. And I said I was a lawyer, but I wasn't sure. And he was so, yeah, jack of all trades, master of none. We don't need any more of those. We need men who are masterful. And it was
grow
like,
up,
grow up, kid. What kind of a flaky character are you? Yeah, absolutely. If only he knew.
Painful that place. It's just so painful.
Well, we needed dudes, you know, and this was repeatedly the message. You know, there wasn't a balanced message. They were either really entranced by that way of looking at reality, or they were very softened and subdued and didn't have the kind of, you know, active male fiber or energy that we were drawn to or conditioned to believe in. I seldom encountered men who were I did this workshop, a Thai massage workshop at Harbin Hot Springs years ago with a beautiful guy named Steve. I went there to Harbin all the time, and with all the madness and all the boundarylessness and all that stuff. And I didn't actually like the nudity. I didn't like that, but I liked something. I was exploring something. I was from Toronto. It was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
A guy there named Steve Carter, who became a tantra teacher, was a body worker there, and he was actually murdered in the Bay Area a few years ago.
Oh.
He was just and he for me was one of the first men I ever encountered. He had a strong male charge coming off of him, and at the same time he was completely able to drop into his heart, and move from a much more gentle, kind and tender place. He drove his pickup, and he was powerful, and he was heart centered. And I remember feeling like, I don't think I've ever met a guy like you before.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm kind of playing with. So one of the things that is very challenging for me from my past that I don't know how to reconcile, but I'm very grateful in my son and his peer group. My daughter, not yet, because she's in high school. We'll see how it all plays out. But my son's in high school, and he has this peer group, and they all hang out, and they kind of group date. He doesn't have a girlfriend, and I'm wise enough not to ask him about that. Like, I'm curious what's going on. I'm super curious, but yesterday I went to a meeting for his art classes going to New York. He's in advanced art. And so there's all these artsy kids. They're all his pals. And so I went to the meeting for the parents, and they're all hanging out, and they all like hug, and they sit together on the floor, and they put their arms on each other. And I'm like, whoa. I mean, I kind of experienced that in theater groups, but this is really organic. This is the way these kids hang out. And so they're group dating, and these girls have agency. What I want for my daughter is agency. What I want for my son is agency, but it's more like emotional agency. Well, for her, I want her to be the decider about her body. And a lot of the girls identify as bisexual, which is really interesting. I think it's a way for them to not feel like they have to, go please a man to have validness. So They're kind of playing this game of, it gives them agency. And that's the bottom line. But the guys too, like I don't know what's going on with him sexually. I don't know, I don't know if he's straight or gay. I don't know if, I don't know if he has a girl, if he's had sexual experiences with girls or boys or anyone. I've talked to him a lot, and tried to like make sure he knows I'm available. We did this program. That doesn't matter. We did a program because I wanted to have someone help initiate the conversation. It was at Stanford Hospital. We flew up to San Francisco. He was there for the summer with my parents, and I went for the first session. My dad went for the second session. It was to create a conversation, right? And it was good. But going back to this idea of a lot of what I carry with me that is still sort of a healthy shame is the way I became a predator with girls, because that was the paradigm of the 80s, right? That was the paradigm was, and I was a good looking guy, so I could. And we were so homophobic back then that you had to prove you weren't gay, and that's true, especially as a good looking guy. It's like, you really had to prove you're not gay. You're a good looking guy. You should be having sex with all these women. But what if I don't want to? But that wasn't in the psyche. It was like, the pushing and the shoving of me to prove I wasn't gay. And then the whole predatory nature of the way we dated or mated or something back then.
I gave teachings on the street hit. I mean, that was normal. It was cool to be the guy who knew how to get a number on the street when a stranger walked down a Toronto side street. It was, this was normal, healthy, functioning, cool behavior. But anyway, continue.
No, just that's it. I mean, so the thing I really look at, because now, you've got Trump, you've got these, men who are semi-exposed. I think with what's his name's death, Jeffrey Epstein's death, they're not really going to be exposed. Or were they ever? I don't know. And like the thing is, that's an extreme, and the layers of it that permeate through our culture, and the way women are objectified, and men are objectified too, because they have to be this horrible version of manhood. It's like, power over in all areas of life. And there's a lack of connection. There's a lack of depth. I mean, Trump is he's such a great poster child, of this awfulness. he can't connect with anyone. He has no capacity for
There's no
empathy or
connection. Well, there's no connection to himself. I mean, there's
right. And a lot of these really successful men, it's like fucking or fighting is the only thing they can have as feeling. That's what the macho man is, fucking or fighting. That's as close to feeling as they're going to get.
yeah.
The rest of the time they're shut down, you know? And it's such a bad bargain for everybody, not just for them, but obviously for the women, So anyhow, I see these young people, my son and my daughter, coming up in a world that I think is going to do it very differently. Thank God.
Yeah, I watched the interface with great curiosity. It's coming at the whole thing from a very, very different place that has a more of an intrinsic equality in it and isn't about anybody being particularly predatory. It feels more vulnerably communicated also, something I'm not used to. Just to say one thing, I mean, when I was 10 or 12 or 13 or 14, I was come on to by a great number of older homosexual men. It was a very
Mm-hmm.
big part of my life, and
Mm-hmm.
so I learned firsthand that this predatory tendency was not just between the masculine and the feminine. It was so fundamentally masculine that it was between the masculine and anything that the masculine could fuck. I was 12 years old, and I remember standing at the corner of Bloor and Young, waiting to buy concert tickets with my friend Peter, and being hit on by one lascivious, strange, dark character after another that wanted to take me up to their one-room apartments at Bloor and Bay. I mean, it went on and on for half an hour. And
I had that experience too. Growing up in San Francisco, same.
yeah,
Lots of men hit on me. I mean,
it's quite I don't know about you, but I remember feeling quite terrified in that experience.
well, so my first agent in LA, I've never publicly told this story. So I got an agent in LA. I'd done an independent film, had some tape. This acting teacher I worked with worked in LA and San Francisco, and he did a sort of showcase of his best talent for this agent in LA, J. Michael Bloom. So J. Michael Bloom, everyone in LA kind of snickers when J. Michael Bloom was your first agent, But he gets me down here. I leave my apartment in San Francisco. I give up my, apartment, my life, my job. I come down here and I get in his office and he's essentially saying that he wants to have some kind of sexual thing go on with him. And
with you and him.
yeah, he said, you know why I like straight men? And I'm like, what? And he said, because they'll give me something they won't give anyone else. And he's sitting there eating these M&Ms, and he's this repulsive Java the Hutt. He's just this repulsive human being.
So Weinsteinian.
It's very Weinsteinian. And I got out of there, and I was a mess. And I was like, oh my God, I've moved my whole life down here. And I called the acting coach, and he got very mad and came to my defense and called Michael. And Michael said, well, he can audition for my agents. If they want him, I guess they can take him. So I did get an audition for his agents. I did get in the agency. I never talked to Michael again. And then I left the agency at some point, went to a different agent, because I got young and restless, blah, blah, blah. I didn't need to be there. And I was comfortable cutting ties. I'd sort of worked my way in. But it was a horrible experience. And so this whole idea that women feeling the casting couch, and, I had a direct experience of that. I wasn't going to do anything. And I think, well, it doesn't matter. But yeah, so it was a horrible experience. Going back to this predatory thing, and
is he still around? Agent?
He's dead.
Oh, he died. Okay.
I met recently a woman who was an agent there, and she wasn't when I was there, but we had a really interesting conversation. She's a very wonderful human being, and she talked it through with me a little. Not that I felt like I needed to necessarily, but it was sweet. It was sweet to hear her say, "Yeah, it's horrible he did things like that."
Well, you get a taste of what so many women experience in the marketplace when they feel as though if they don't put out, they're not going to be able to survive in this world. I mean, what a fucking horror show that is.
It's a horror show, and it's just so sick,
Yeah.
because people are totally objectified and dehumanized. And anyone being objectified and dehumanized is really evil. I mean, it gets really evil. I mean, that's what I feel like is happening right now in our politics, this politics of cruelty, where not me, but these people who need the enemy. The enemy is what? Immigrants? Come on. and then these
They were
crazy
all
people.
immigrants. They all came from immigrant stock. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's brown immigrants. It's not just
All
immigrants.
right. Okay. Of course. It's the
Great
brown.
white European, then we'll take them. But if they're black or brown or something, then no, we don't like them. Yeah, it's a special kind of
Nazism.
yeah, yeah, it's frightening, you know. So again, I want my, you know, my kids to be successful in their own humanity and their ability to ask for what they want and need and feel met, feel loved, and feel seen. And it's a different criteria for success than I think what we were raised with. Even by good people. My parents were loving people. They meant well. No one was doing anything, you know, they just didn't know. They didn't know. That
And
was
that was
the,
their context. I mean, you know, when I was street hitting, that was my context. This was all I understood. That was what it meant to be a kind of a cool, groovy guy in that context. Now it's probably, in most contexts in the West, considered preposterous and horrifying and an abuse in some level or something.
yeah.
But 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't how it was perceived.
Have you seen this consent and tea video?
No.
Oh, it's very funny. I'll send it to you. It's in English. It's really good. It's
Uh,
really funny. Yeah, consent and tea.
oh, I'd like to see that.
Yeah, it's very good. It's a cartoon they created, and it's just hysterical. I'm laughing, but it's really profound. They showed it to both my kids. My kids, I'll tell you one thing that's interesting in so as parents, you know, screen time and not too much screen time. Um, I've we've stopped that a little bit. I mean, there are boundaries around do your homework and go to bed and stuff, and the kids will just keep watching whatever it is, videos and stuff. But YouTube and how they navigate. So I've been really kind of tuning into what my daughter watches, and my wife has been watching things with her, sort of encouraging her. Anyhow, we have a really interesting dialogue now through this medium of YouTube and what they're watching. My daughter is working a lot of things out, and it's actually great. She has access to a lot of great stuff. I know there's spooky stuff out there. She's not going for that. She's going for fairly I don't know. Some of it's obnoxious, and it's like, wow, that's really obnoxious. But she's just trying to work it out. There's a big range of things she's looking at, you know, from these kind of catty, kind of bitchy girl things to she's really into these undercover kind of moral stories that ABC was doing, where they'd set up a moral dilemma, and then they'd, you know, sort of hidden camera, and then they'd go talk to there was an actor behaving badly in a restaurant, and then how people responded. And so she's having her own thing about moral dilemmas, and she's watching this thing about bad kids and how the bad kids, you know, anyhow, it's fascinating. So
Fantastic. Hey, Freeman, so if you could, I mean, you've been so many Freemans, you know, along the way. That's the way I think of you.
that's true.
And I don't mean that in some wildly ridiculous way at all. I just think it's just true. I feel like you are an inner explorer on many levels, and you're interfacing relationally out in the world, and you're bringing it all together in some kind of whatever that is, and it keeps changing and transforming as you gather more information internally and externally. So if you can look ahead 5 years from now, and imagine who will Freeman be in 5 years, if he can continue to grow and so forth. How different is that guy from the guy I'm talking to right now?
Yeah, not that different. I think the thread that you're recognizing about sort of my own sense of personal ease right now, I just want more of that. So however that gets expressed, you know, part of me doesn't care. I mean, part of me is very curious to see what plays out, because this idea of showing up more authentically, that feels like it came out of one of the spiritual books, but let's just use it because it's the best language I have. The more I'm really radically self-loving, like radically, you know, like it's okay. And I give myself permission to be me, then I'm really curious what's going to happen. Like I do feel at this point in my life that there's a next moment of just what unfolds if I'm not trying so hard. What unfolds if I really have reconciled that shame that takes me out of my game, as it were, that takes me out of showing up because I don't want to feel shame. I'm more willing to put myself out there. I'm more willing to be me with whatever awkwardness and messiness is willing to come up. I wonder what 5-10 years is going to look like. I wonder what that's going to transpire into, you know? I don't know. I kind of like the idea of not knowing too. I feel like it's a better bargain than trying to shoehorn it into. One of
Yeah.
the things about
Yeah.
a vision, we always say in my work, we always say create a quality-based vision, because whatever you can see from where you're presently standing is not what's going to play out. I mean, you know, before there was a smartphone, there was a flip phone. And standing with a flip phone in your hand, can you imagine a smartphone? No. But the qualities of how you want to communicate and what's valuable about communicating, you can know that. And then how it gets expressed might look a whole lot different in 5 years or 15 minutes in the way things are speeding up. So the actual, like, am I running for office? Am I, you know, I don't know, am I back on stage somewhere, or am I on a pilot doing something, or do I have a new radio show or a podcast, or did I write another?
Or a muffler shop. A muffler shop.
A muffler shop. Except they don't like cars. But if I did,
a place that sells DeVito glasses, then I mean, come on.
That's right. We can go with that. No, but it's great. Let's see how this unfolds. But it is going in the direction of things I enjoy, going in the direction of things that feel like they're reflective of who I am and what I have to do and say and be in the world. That's the bigger game.
Nice. I wish that for you.
How about you, my friend?
That's complicated. I think that I would like to be doing, you know, I'm a masochist, and I'm super driven, and how that all ties in together, who knows? And I've been the kind of guy who can work 400 hours doing something he hates to get 12 minutes of something he loves. And so I would like to turn that upside down a little and spend less time doing the administrative and annoying things that I do to run shows and build things, and to be spending more time just doing the things that feel really liberating and feel really good to me and feel like they express the truest intentionality that I know in terms of, you know, what gratifies me and the offering that I want to bring. So, yeah, I mean, I think doing a lot of the same things. I've been thinking about politics, even at my age. You know, in this one way, Baby Donald has given me some inspiration. And building the online school Soul Shaping Institute, absolutely. That's coming imminently. And my new jeffbrown.co site, growing that and growing downloadable courses. I have a vision of having 20 or 30 download courses for people at every different various stages on the path, whatever the path is, so they can plug in and find a course that's, you know, really depthful and affordable and available to people in foreign countries with foreign translation, and affordable for people who didn't have very much money. I mean, this has always been what I want to do. And then some crazy part of me lately, after writing Grounded Spirituality, absolutely vowed I would never write a book again. It was just completely insanely arduous. And I don't know, lately a little bit of some part of me has this idea about writing 2 books. It's just, you know, from nothing to 2.
I wonder if, because I saw Carmageddon, of course, when it came out.
I'll do a sequel.
Yeah, I wonder if something that way. I mean, look, Coffee with Jeff. I don't know. I mean, it's fine. You can write books. It can be that much work. You're welcome to do it. Or even the courses. You can do it in all these different languages. I don't know. Fine.
Right.
But I think my own take is there's an accessibility of Jeff that I feel like I want to see. Because look, here's the thing. Your voice to me is so important. It's contrarian, but not for contrarian's sake. In other words, you're willing to say what other people aren't. And it's such a relief, because I do think the hierarchy, we got to dismantle it. We have to have a conversation that flattens the playing field so everyone can be where they're at without the, like, oh, the master knows. I have to genuflect and bow down. You know, I don't know if you saw, I posted. Go ahead.
He knew what a schmuck he is. Yeah, I mean, you know, this is the thing. When you're a guy, you get to know that these guys don't know. I mean, this is the thing you learn as a guy. You know, and people project onto the guy. And I've been around a lot of guys, and most of them don't know anything. You're as lost as everybody else, for fuck's sake. So to get to the stage where we get that, we don't know. We all don't know. So now let's explore the question together and stop acting and godjectifying and pretend some schwanz knows. Who doesn't know? He doesn't know.
And we get to make it up. You know, I wrote today, there was an article, great article about sort of the limitations of 12-step programs. And I was saying my 2 cents about it, because I think that I have big problems with that one size fits all, and that has its own kind of goofy spirituality. And people are over-identifying with being alcoholic. You know, identify but don't identify with. Like, yeah, that's your pattern, but it's a pattern. And so it comes from
For
something.
everybody, it comes from a uniquely different place,
So the thing is, it's just like borrowing from all these different modalities to create something that works for me. I want people to have that where you can say, great, 12-step is interesting. Here's this over here and this over here and this over here. And I can own my own, even recovery is lame. It's just my own process. So I'm less, in my coping with alcohol or weed or whatever it is. I'm less in the pattern, and I'm more able to be more alive. And I've got this wonderful mechanism to do it, where you're not going to be shunned by the 12-step people because you're not on. What step are you on? Did you check those boxes? I didn't see you at the meeting last Friday. Come on,
everything becomes industry. Everything becomes
right.
industry. I see this in social media. I put up a post that's. I never think before I put up a post about like how many likes I'm going to get or how it's going to support my brand. I'm a Canadian. I don't even know what the fucking brand even means. I find the word, it's repulsive to me. I mean, I had a flip phone until last year and I didn't even know you could get data.
You're the guy with the flip phone.
I just learned that there's a contact list. It's like, I don't write posts like that. I don't think about those things. But you'll notice, so if I write something contrary, I critically review Tole or Ajashanti or Byron Katie, whoever it is, these guys come on. It's almost always guys. And they come on and they say, oh, you're just saying that in order to grow your industry, in order to grow your brand. Right. And it's such because God forbid they don't know what a sacred activist is. It's that they can't relate to that there might be someone out there who cares about humanity and put something up there because they want to protect people. They don't believe any of that. All they believe is that it has to be egoically, financially motivated. And this is the whole problem, that everything becomes industry and we don't know what anything looks like outside of that intentionality, So we need more sacred activists on this planet, men and women who are motivated by the desire to actually make this world a better place. And
woohoo. Amen.
Yeah. And if we do that, it's not going to move in the direction of industry and becoming that kind of it's why Alexander Lowen broke away from the bioenergetics people. He said, this is becoming administrative. This is becoming a business. It's losing its organic quality. That's not what I intended. Bioenergetics is very, very authentic and organic and embodied. And, that's exactly what happens.
And trust these young people coming up. The world that they're looking to create, they know more than we do in a particular way. And so
their authenticity mometers are set in a completely different way than ours are.
And to play the game of Daddy Knows Best it was lame then, it's even more lame now.
It's so boring. I can't take it. It's ridiculous. Trump is it's so ridiculous. I don't even know what to do with it.
Yeah. It's preposterous.
It's just fucking preposterous. Anyway, Freeman, a delight always to see you, honestly. Fantastic to see you.
All right, my friend.
We'll connect again.
Awesome.